Hey guys, Jack McGrath from Digitec Interactive. So, employee turnover, it's incredibly expensive and it's really disruptive to your company, your employee, and your managers. So, if you're struggling on coming up with really effective employee onboarding, today I'm going to get you smarter faster on how to develop learning journeys for more effective onboarding. Stick around. So, let's start out with the big number. 69%. So that represents how likely an employee is to stay with a company for at least 3 years if they're offered great onboarding. So that's pretty significant. It's 69% more likelihood that they're going to stay for more than 3 years. It's going to reduce your turnover and your disruption. So what is great onboarding? That's what the key is, according to the SHRM report. Well, let's start by talking about what great onboarding is not. Okay. All right. Now I want you to be honest. How many of you see paperwork as your onboarding strategy? Okay. If you're being honest, according to a recent ATD survey, 58% of companies use paperwork. They basically, on their first day, they send their employees to HR to fill out paperwork, and that's the onboarding. Okay, that's pretty terrible onboarding. I think all of us could agree with that. And I think most managers believe they don't offer very good onboarding. So, on the other end of this spectrum, one particular client that we've worked for in the past, when a team member came on board, there was 40 hours of online learning, of e-learning, before they could even start getting productive on the job. That was really frustrating to managers who needed help and didn't have access to these resources. And so I had to bring up this cartoon. I give full credit to Mike Kunkel, who is an expert in sales training, and I really admire Mike. And he showed this, and I thought this was exactly true. 40 hours of training, how much are you going to actually retain? Well, if you remember, and I've talked about this several times on these videos, according to the Ebbinghaus curve, when we learn something, if we don't use it and apply it, within 7 to 10 days, you've forgotten about 90% of the content. So that's pretty frightening. So what a waste of resources when you think about how much effort would go into 40 hours of onboarding, and then the employee can't retain any of it. So that spray and pray approach doesn't work, and paperwork doesn't work either. So what is great onboarding and how can we create it? That's when I want to get into talking about journeys, learning journeys. Now, in other videos, I've talked about how to design learning journeys, but this time I want to talk about how to develop them. So, three-step process. First off, it's role-based. So if you're an employee and you're faced with 40 hours of generic content, it's really frustrating. You're going to fall asleep at your desk because it's not contextual and it's not tailored to the actual employee. So we pick roles first. Next, it's got to be time-spaced. We've got to overcome that curve. And that curve is saying that you're going to forget 90% of what you've learned within 10 days. It's horrible. So how can we do that? We can use boosters by providing time spaced to deliver up just what they need to know when they need to know it in their first 60, 90, 6 months, and 1 year. And finally, it needs to be assessed. You can't show that anything's been learned unless it's been assessed. So the concept behind this is let's make sure we're measuring what's being learned so that we can make sure that the employee knows and can apply it. So starting out in role-based, and I've done this before when we're talking about designing learning journeys, and you can look for that video online as well. But what we use basically is a persona, just like marketing companies do. For us, the ideal account manager in this example was Sydney. So what we do is we identify, hey, what does Sydney do that makes her such a star performer? And this is how you design your online learning or your training experience. But you'll notice that you not only have a listing of what Sydney does day to day to be great, but also what are some specific examples. And the nice thing is that you build training right to that behavioral example. Okay. So you'll notice that we've already got this particular map mapped out. We've got some onboarding courses that are included. We've got some job aids. We've got some off-the-shelf content that's available. So we've already got the content, we've got the training in this particular instance. So what's next? So we've already made this role-based. These are the things that an account manager would need to know. But instead of doing what we talked about, which is the Ebbinghaus curve, we have all of this content that they get right up front. And again, I'm going to credit Mike Kunkel on this. He exposed me to this concept years ago, and it's really phenomenal, I think. And the concept is that for every new hire, you want to identify 2 to 3 major milestones. So for sales, it's pretty easy to apply. And the milestone is, what is the first sale? So what does somebody like Sydney need to know and do within that first period of time to hit that first milestone of the first sale? And then you look at what they need to know now on milestone 2. So then all we're going to do is we're going to focus on those need to knows for each one of those milestones. So if we apply this in context, you saw the map, we had all those resources available. So what we do is we have all of this content. In this case, it's everything that an account exec would need to know. But what we do is we're selectively assigning this content based on those milestones. So we're building our journey based on milestones. Now, in our case, Knowledge Direct, we really refer to these as waypoints, but it's the same thing. It's a milestone that you're building towards. You're only providing what they need to know for the first milestone, and then the second, and then the third. And this could occur over the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. It's up to you to decide what those milestones are. But the key is you just want to include what they need to know in those first. In my example, for account managers, they need to have an elevator pitch done. They need to know about our company, and they need to know about our products. I mean, it's a fairly small thing to really start doing a first sales call. And that's my first milestone. Okay, so it's measured. So we talked about if it's not measured, it's not learned, right? So for us, Knowledge Direct, when it comes down to knowledge-based information, like product knowledge, for example, or customer information, things like that, we can assess that. We can actually train it online, self-paced. It's a perfect venue for being able to provide it. And in Knowledge Direct, we provide a lot of functionality like video-based assessments so that all of the measurements and the assessments are applied in context to a situation. It's really important to not just have knowledge checks that test for just general knowledge. Try to tee up that content in context to a specific situation that the persona would really relate to. So in this case, it's a situation with a customer, for example, or whatever it happens to be. So that's for the knowledge, what they need to know. Now, what they need to do, I'm a big proponent of face-to-face. In fact, I mean, the surveys are showing that I think about 78% of employees found that the most effective portion of their onboarding was the time they spent with their managers one-on-one. So I think skills, having checklists available, providing feedback, one-on-one, touch bases, huddle up with your employees. I think it's key. And there you can assess their skills. Listen in on a sales call, listen in on a client interaction. Those are the ways to provide the skills-based and make sure they're being measured. So to wrap up on our journeys, again, making sure they're role-based. And for more information on how to design those, check out my other videos. Also make sure they're time-spaced based on milestones. Milestones you decide. What are the milestones that that person needs to achieve at what dates? And then make sure that they're measured. Really good, effective assessments for your knowledge-based stuff that you can do through through a learning management platform, like Knowledge Direct, for example. And then also design in some one-on-one skills-based assessments that are measured. So that's my key. That's how I hope you've gotten smarter, faster on learning journeys and how to create them. My name is Jack McGrath at Digitec Interactive. If you have any questions, reach out. I hope that you'll like this post if you found it useful. I hope that you'll share it, and I hope you'll subscribe. All right. Have a good one.